Alright everybody, welcome to this introduction video in how to make a landscape model in Rhino. We're going to make a landscape model for the laser on the Lucas workshop. We're going to use a technique which is pretty simple, efficient and material non-consuming, but it's quite difficult to show on screen, so I'm going to do my very best. Before this video, you should have watched the how to download the Python plugin and the script for the laser. If you haven't done that, please make sure that you go back in the other videos and check that out before you go through this. To make sure, if you've downloaded and installed the Python script plugin correctly, you can write in Rhino run Python script. You can just write on your keyboard, run Python script. If it shows up, you've installed it correctly. So this is not going to be a very difficult video, not very technique based, but it is of course easier if you've used Rhino before. But if you haven't, try to pay attention and yeah, I don't think it's going to be too difficult for you. So when you open the Rhino window, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a top view, a perspective view, a front view, and a right view. We're going to work in the top view, so double click here. The first thing you have to know is that the laser, it uses the two-axis system. This is why we use the top view. It's the x-axis and the y-axis. And once you've placed your origo on the laser, that's going to be the same as the origo here in Rhino. So in order to laser, you have to know one thing beforehand. It's that it has a boundary. Of course, it can't laser in the dimension of infinity. So we're going to make a boundary box first, and then we're going to make some height curves, and we're going to use the technique which I've talked about. So let's get cracking. We're going to use the rectangle with 3 points. You have, you can see the cursor hovering around. So the first point is going to be in 0. You write 0 on your keyboard. It's going to pop up here, and you click enter. The boundary box is going to be 1,800 millimeters times 1,000. So you click 1,800. Click enter, and then 1,000. And we're going to name this the boundary layer. And then we have the workable area of our laser. So it starts in origo and ends in 1,800 times 1,000. Always make sure that you work on the northeast side of your origo. That means in the plus x and y axis. Let's make some height curves. We're going to make a new layer called cut 1. And we're going to make a new layer called engrave 1. The cut 1 layer we can make, actually let's make the boundary red. And we double click on the cut 1 layer to activate it, and we can lock the boundary layer because we're not going to use that anymore. Let's make the cut 1 layer, let's keep it black, and the engrave 1 layer, let's make it a white. Alright, so we're going to use, in this video, we're going to use just simple curves. This is the curve command, and this is the line and polyline. So if you use this command, you're going to be able to use or make curves that are curved, not linear. And make sure that you have the project ability activated, so you make sure that you always draw in the z equals 0 plane. Because if your drawing is above the set 0 plane, you're not going to be able to laser it. And just to make sure, let's just take off ortho so we can work in different parts of the x and y axis, not just in the 90 degrees system. and you can use different snap objects or abilities here. You can take off the O snap here or here, but this makes it easier to draw precise. So let's just start out by making some curves here. And let's take off the center, it's annoying. It always tries to snap on the center. Alright, so we have some height curves here. You can also import a file from either a PDF, or you can import a photo here, or you can import a CAD file. And many other different files. So Rhino is just the hub for going through to the laser and producing the G code, which is the language that the laser uses. So you're always going to do you're always going to go through Rhino when you're going to laser something. So you can import different kind of files, whatever you like. So the thing is here that the technique that we're going to use, it's based on that you choose every other line and you make a new cutting file. You make two cutting files, one for these lines and then next for these lines. On the first cutting file you're going to cut these lines and you're going to engrave these lines. So let's make these lines the engrave 1. You can change the object layer here or copy, but let's choose the change object layer. So I'm going to show you a file which tries to explain this a little bit further. We have here the boundary box in yellow, and we have the green line, or the green lines, plural, which is the cut 1 layer, and the blue lines, which are the engrave 1 layer. And then next we have the cut 2 layer, which is the red lines, and the engrave, which is the blue lines. And I can see that we are lacking this one on the engrave 2 layer, so let's add that. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to show you here how the technique works. So you have your plate here, the end plate, which is going to be the where you glue your model on. And let's see here, show all of these. Yeah, there we go. So the first plate, we can see from above, the first plate is this one, and or the first cutting file is this one, and this one. The green ones with the blue lines for engraving, that's going to be our first laser file. So that goes out from one plate, one material. And then we have the red ones that are going to be the second cutting file with the blue lines for engraving. Engraving is just not cutting through the material, it's just marking marking on the material, not cutting entirely through. So when you've cut these, you put them one after another on top of each other, and then it's good to have the engrave lines here so you know where the next file is going to be placed. And I've put these, I think, 100 up, yeah. So you put them like so, and on the end here you're going to have a gap, which you're going to be able to close with timber or material or candy or whatever you want to use. So then you have your height curve model, the landscape model. So let's go over to the next, or our original file, and let's make 2 new layers, the cut 2 layer and the engrave 2 layer. We choose the black lines, which is the 1 layer and copy them to the engrave 2 layer. And let's make that a golden color. And we choose the engrave 1 lines and copy them to the cut 2 layer. So that's more or less what we did here, right? Here you can see that the green cutting file has an engrave of a blue line where the next cutting file starts, right? So the red cutting file starts on the blue line of the cutting 1 file, an engrave 1 file. Yeah, alright, so now we have the cut 1 file here. It's going to cut by the black lines here, and it's going to engrave the white lines. So what we need now is just a cutting line just around the material, right? So now it's going to cut through the black line and engrave the white lines. The laser is always engraving first and then cutting afterwards. That's because on the laser there is an ability of losing or probability of losing material which has been cut because they're too small. So it's always best to have the files being engraved before you cut them, so they don't fall through before you're able to engrave what you're going to engrave. So now this is ready. We don't need the boundary box. That's not going to be laser. That's just for knowing how where the workable area is. Let's hide those layers and show this. And you can see that here the engrave 2 layer has the first line on where the first cut 1 line is going to be. Here as such, right? But you're not gonna cut out in the cut 2 file, you're not gonna cut out this piece, or you're going to, but you're not going to use it because this is your first cutting file for the first piece for the cut 2 file, right? So you can delete that, and now we have the cut 2 file. We just need the last cut line, right? So now you have it. You have your cut 1 file with the engrave lines, and you have the cut 2 file with your engrave lines. Alright, so when you've done this, you can run the Python script by typing run Python script, and you're going to find it wherever you've stored it. I've stored it in my skrivebord, and it's going to be called G-code script Python by default. So when you run it, it's going to ask you what layer it's going to use for engraving. Here you choose the engrave 1, and for cutting you choose the cut 1. And here you can use the MDF or the cardboard or the poplar, which has been shown probably in the last video or maybe the coming video. So check that out if you're wondering about what that is. So let's use the MDF 3mm, and ta-da, it's going to ask me to save it. I'm just going to save as laser 1. And then it shows you a dialog box of the summary of the file, which is the total of engraved curves and the engraving time, and also the cutting curves and the cutting time. This is essential for understanding how long it's going to take. It's fairly accurate, but not always. And it's also going to show you if you have any skipped objects or out of bounds object. This is if you've worked outside the workable area of the boundary box, right? And then the total estimated time to run the file. So then we have the cut1 file. Let's run the cut2 file. Run Python script, same procedure. Engrave2, cut2, MDF 3mm. And it's fairly important that you choose the right material for your cutting file. If you, for instance, use MDF 3mm, which needs a lot of power on the laser, if you choose that for the file and then you use a cardboard 1mm, it's going to use a lot of power to burn through the cardboard, and it will the material will incinerate. And on the other way around, if you're gonna cut in MDF and you choose cardboard, it's not gonna cut through. So yeah. Oh no, sorry. I'm trying to save, that's what I'm trying to do. Alright, laser beam 2, then. And the same dialog box. Everything seems alright. Alright, so then you have your two files. Now you're going to place them as such, as I showed you, after you've lasered the file. So for this specific landscape model, you're going to use 3 plates of the same dimension. You're going to use the yellow one, the green one, and the red one. And then you have the only spare material you have left is going to be whatever, this part right here, that's going to be spare, and also this part right here. So fairly material saving, but of course there's always ways to be better, right? So if you have any ideas, we're glad to hear them. Alright, so you have your files, and then you're gonna make a jump into a Dropbox, which you're going to be invited to after you finish this course. You're going to make a folder within the Multicam 3000 folder and laser files folder. This is mine. Keep your folder empty and keep it tidy, because we're trying to clean this whenever we can, but an overload of files is going to be an overload for everybody, because sometimes if you use the synchronized Dropbox to your computer, you get to you're going to download every single file which is in this folder, right? So try to keep it clean. Last uppfila, upload files, right? I put it in the skrivebord. Let's upload them both. Alright, let's sneak a little, yeah. So now you've uploaded it, and then the Dropbox is going to synchronize to the laser. So in the next video, we're going to show you how to find your file, how to laser your file, where to use it, and all the practical stuff. But hopefully you've understand now how to make a simple landscape model like this. And the complexity is not very big in this file, so just use your imagination, try out things, but remember to just stay safe. And of course, if you have any questions, just don't hesitate to ask the people at the workshop, Jürgen, Pete, and they're going to be happy to use to help you. And of course, if you know us, just ask us questions and we'll try to help you out. All right, thank you guys. Good luck.